You are listening to the Table Podcast produced by One Create Productions. This podcast is free to listen and brought to you by no advertisements. If you enjoyed this listening experience, all we ask is to share this podcast to your friends and loved ones. Thank you and enjoy the show. This is the Table Podcast, episode 5, titled Trauma and Healing. I'm your host, Barry Almeria, and with me today is Jay Jackson. We have a special guest today, the beautiful Elkie Freeman.
Thank you.
This is the podcast about entrepreneurship, leadership, and finance. Today's guest is the beautiful Elkie Freeman. Elkie Freeman is a licensed marriage and family therapist. For the last 5.5 years, she has worked for a nonprofit agency serving system-involved youth and their families in the most difficult season of their lives. Elkie is experienced in crisis and trauma work, supporting youth who are experiencing mental health challenges ranging from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress to bipolar and multiple personalities. She has also worked with youth who engage in substance abuse, have gang involvement, and those who have currently reside in group homes and juvenile hall. Elkie is passionate about the work and helping others heal from the traumas of life. And Elkie, of course, thank you for being here. It's truly an honor.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Elkie, just a little bit introduction of your background and what made you get into this line of work.
Yeah, so I've always worked with kids thanks to our mom, who's always worked with children. And, I'd go to work with her during the summer times, things like that. She's always coached gymnastics or cheerleading or something that had to do with kids and movement. And so I would go with her, help her out. I'm also the oldest of 4, so I've always been around kids and helping out with my younger siblings, Jay being the first younger sibling that I have. And then we have 2 younger sisters as well. And so I've just always been around kids, and I have 3 of my own now as well. But I started out wanting to be a teacher. I've always loved teaching, I think, from watching our mom teach and seeing the response that she gets from kids and also her love and her passion for it. And so I was going the teaching route in school, and I was working at a daycare at the time, a preschool. And at that particular school, I would say maybe there were 2 or 3 families that had both a mother and father present in the home that was actually healthy. And we saw so many crazy things. We had restraining orders on file for certain kids. We had parents who were trying to commit suicide. We had kids whose parents were constantly being deported and then snuck back in the country and then deported again. And I'm watching all this, and I'm doing the best that I can to support these kids and love them and nurture them. And I also kind of felt hopeless at the same time, helpless. I don't really know how to help and support these kids. I know that there's more that needs to be done, but I don't know what that more is. And so I was in the middle of my 3rd year of getting my teaching degree, and then I changed majors. I was this is not the route. And so I switched to psychology. And I'm I'm going to be a therapist. I need to help these kids in a deeper way. They need real support. And I never looked back. And I knew that at some point there'd be opportunities to teach, in this field too. But I was no, there's deeper healing that needs to happen. And so I switched over to psychology and started that route. And here I am.
Nice. Well, so I came from a broken family. My mom and dad divorced, and I lost 2 people between that divorce, and it was I would say it didn't really hit me until I was probably 15, and I thought divorce was just whatever. It's just people just fall out of love and stuff like that. But then I heard stories in history of why my mom and dad got divorced, and until now it's just I don't want to repeat the history since now I have a wife and a child. So I don't want to repeat that. I want to be better, So it's hard because I have two families living. I have family living in Florida and I have a family living in, here in
Yeah.
California. So do you gear towards prevention of, family separation? Like, do you try to help families try not to get divorced, try not to get, to help kids and stuff like that? So
So usually the nonprofit that I work for, by the time they get to us, we are the last stop before they get hospitalized or they're in juvenile hall or they're sent off to an intensive care placement.
yeah,
So by the time they get to us, they're already broken. They've already hit rock bottom. They're already at their absolute worst. And so my job then is to help them begin, even sometimes just start the very first step to healing. A lot of times they're still in the middle of their stuff.
yeah,
They're still in the middle of that pain. And so the beautiful part about, the work that I'm doing right now is I don't just work with that youth, but I get to work with their whole family, whether the family is grandma who's raising the kiddo, or it is the parent, maybe they've been adopted, maybe it's their foster family. Whoever their caregiver is, we're going to start to work with them and we're going to build connection and community around them because that's how you really heal.
Right.
It's not me as a therapist coming in like, okay, we're going to fix your problems. That's not my job. My job is to help you see what you already have and help those people around you see, what's going on and how they can help support you because I'm paid to be here. So I'm only going to be here for a short amount of time, but when I'm gone, who's going to be there to like pick up,
Right,
where we left off? And so that's why we like to, what I do is called wraparound. And that's literally what we think of. We're wrapping around you with support and love and resources and community so that when these people who are paid to be here are gone, the folks that are actually naturally in your life will know what to do and how to keep supporting you so that you can continue to heal the rest of your life.
I feel like that's important, like to give somebody the tools in order to heal themselves and not just like send them on their way,
Right.
Yeah, that's
Because that doesn't work, right? I can give you a toolbox, but if I don't teach you how to use the hammer, the screwdriver, if I don't teach you how to use those tools, you're going to look at them like, this is useless to me.
right.
I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I got a hole in the wall and I don't know how to patch it. And I don't know if anything in this toolbox is actually going to help me fix the hole in my wall.
Right.
So my job is to actually come alongside you. We start out with an empty box. Maybe you have one or two things that you already know and you put in there. All right, so I'm going to give you this hammer, but I'm going to show you how to use it first. Right. I'll demonstrate, and then I'm going to hold your hand, we'll do it together. Now you do it, I'll watch. Okay, now you do it. So that's like, it's like teaching a baby like how to walk, right? They don't just get up and take off sprinting, right? No, you help them, you guide them, you let them stumble. Oh, you fell. Okay, let's try again. It's the same thing. Like we grow up, but we don't ever fully grow up.
Right.
At some point in our life, we all need somebody to come alongside us and be like, all right, look, I got your hand. Come on, let's do it together. You don't have to do this alone. But you got to learn these things before you can move on to the next.
Right.
So I just want to go over some statistics. Almost 50% of all marriages in the U.S. will end in divorce or separation. Researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages end in divorce, 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 72% of all third marriages end in divorce. The U.S. has the sixth highest divorce rate in the world. Number one is Russia. So, how does divorce affect young children and teenagers, like mentally?
Yeah, I think a lot of how it's going to affect a child has to do with how the parents handle it. So, either way it goes, it's traumatic, right? You've known your family to be one way, and then one day it's not like that anymore. And the people that you've always known to be together, they're in two, different places, and it's not like I can just go out of one room and go see this one and go to the next room and mom's in the kitchen, whatever. Now I have to wait to see a parent, or maybe I'm never going to see that other parent ever again. is it better now that my parents aren't together? Were they arguing, fighting? Was I around like yelling and they're cussing each other out and all this stuff and they're physically fighting? So maybe I feel relief that that has ended. Or is it, I thought everything was fine and we were happy, and then all of a sudden I see dad walking out with a suitcase and he never like came back. So now a lot of what happens is the children feel inadequate. Like, was it because of me? Did I do something?
Right.
Was it my fault? Because maybe the parents haven't sat them down like, this is not your fault. You know, this is an adult thing. It has nothing to do with you. We both still love you, blah, 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 right? But if the adults aren't in a place where they can nurture the child through that process, and all they see is the reasons why they're splitting up, and forget that that kid also is like experiencing this tragic loss too, then this kid is going to think it's their fault. So that's when we tend to see kids like falling into substance use or you know, the gangs, because they're trying to find a family, or even not necessarily gangs. A lot of what we're seeing right now with young ladies who don't have fathers in the home is what we call CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation of children. So they're getting connected with these older men who are like, oh, sweetie, you're so beautiful. Hey, I'm going to buy you this and that. I got you. But then at some point that turns to, now I need something from you.
Yeah.
And then that's how you have sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Sonoma County has one of the largest sex trafficking rings in our
crazy.
State, but also like in the country.
That's crazy.
And it's so subtle, and you wouldn't know it unless you knew what the signs were. So now we have these young girls who are hurting because dad left and, you know, didn't like mom or whatever. So mom is hurting and insecure, which now the daughter's insecure, and now she's seeking it out from these other places and gets caught up in things. So there's so many different pathways. Or maybe I've had, you know, worked with kids who don't come out of their room anymore.
Yeah.
They're so depressed. They have blackout curtains. They can't even get out of bed. They're failing in school. They don't want to be around other people. They're super anxious that something else bad is going to happen. Like, there's so many different things that can come from parents splitting.
Yeah.
If it's not handled with care, you know. And I think that's something that a lot of adults don't necessarily think about. Like, oh yeah, we're going to be great for the kids, but they don't really stop to think like, what is the actual impact this is having on the children? Yeah. And how are they young enough where maybe that's all they're ever going to know? Or are they older and now they hate one parent or the other because you broke our family, or, you know, whatever. So I think it depends. It really does depend. There's no like clear cut, this is what it's always going to look like, or, you know, this is how this happens. But then you also have those kids who are amazingly resilient, and they're like, that's my parents, like, that's their stuff. I got things that I'm like working on, or I want to do better than what I saw.
Right.
You know, I didn't get to see a healthy marriage, so I'm going to create a healthy marriage when it's my turn. You know, I didn't get to see a healthy, you know, nuclear family, but I am determined to like make my own one day. So when I have kids, they're never going to see that.
Right.
Even if we did divorce, I'm going to make sure that my kids are taken care of, that we do it in a way that has, you know, their best interests at heart. Of course, the goal is, you know, you get married, you're not thinking about, oh yeah, one day we're going to divorce. You know, that's not the goal, right? But sometimes those things happen. But how are we going to handle this with care now so that the kids don't suffer?
Right.
Like, they're going to experience some loss, but we don't want them to suffer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely hard. Because I grew up with a stepmom, and there was I do want to say it did affect me like mentally in a way, because I did lose some self-esteem issues and some confidence, because I didn't know where my mom was, and I didn't get in touch with her until I was after in the Coast Guard. I got in, and then she decided to contact me when I was stationed in Seattle, and then I was just like, whole world of just like shook me. I was just like, whoa, what's going on? Even though I was 22 or 21, I was just like, whoa, this.
How long had it
revert
been
back.
since you saw your mom?
It was, I think the last time I saw her, I was 9.
To 22?
Yeah, to
Word.
22.
And how easily we revert back to that 9-year-old little boy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how, you could be 52
Yeah.
and get that phone call, and all of a sudden you're 9 again, and you're remembering all the things that you experienced, and like you're flooded with the same emotions.
Yep.
And it's like, whoa,
Exactly, yeah.
where is this coming from?
Yeah. There was a hint of like fear a little bit, and a little bit of like insecurity. And I was just like, well, just out of nowhere, she just comes back into my life. And I actually had to go back to my dad and say, hey, Dad, just the permission to like, hey, do you still want me to, talk to her? Can I talk to her? And it's like, yeah, you're a grown adult. Let's do what you want. I was like, all right, well, I just put it in my own hands, and, I called her that. A couple of days later, I called her. So,
Yeah.
But, it was a rush of emotions for sure. And I advise not like anybody to go through that. It's just it's just really bad. It's just really bad for the mental health. But
absolutely,
especially if you don't have the right support.
Yeah.
Right. If you're like going at it by yourself, and you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
It can be kind of dangerous, right? Because now you're left with all these emotions, and you're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
It can either just, for some people, it's like a garbage bag full of stuff. Other people, it's a dumpster fire worth of stuff. And you're like, how do I, what do I do with all of this? I've got all these emotions. All of a sudden, this person shows up again. It's not like I gave them permission to just come back into my life all of a sudden. But now I'm left with what to do. Like, how do I handle this? So if you have the support and, a loving family or what have you, or therapy, that somewhere where you can kind of process some of that stuff, or like have some support to navigate it, it makes it a little easier.
It makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. But yes, and then going back, it's just like I'm glad and happy that I've got to see her again, because now I kind of know like where I'm coming from, where my personality comes from a little bit. It's just like, my personality definitely came from my mom. So but the challenges of the youth today, what do you think? What do you think is the most, like, do you think that they have, like, the youth today don't have positive male, female role models in today's generation?
I think that their role models are all on screens.
Yeah.
For most of the youth, especially the ones that I work with, they're looking for something. Like, they have this hole in their heart, and they're looking for something to fill it. And we've all got a screen. We've all got a tablet, a phone. If I'm not getting it from my family, or my family's abusive to me or whatever, I'm going to try to zone out. So I'm going to go watch and be on my phone for hours, right? I'm watching these videos, or I'm making TikTok dances, or I'm doing all these things and, taking all these pictures to try to make people think I'm happy. And I am dying inside. There's a hole. And I'm trying to find something to fill it, but nothing is filling this hole in my heart or in my life. And so they're watching all the celebrities and what they're doing, who also have holes. They're trying to fill in their own way.
Just that void, right?
There's that
inside.
void that they're longing for. Exactly. So I think on the other side of that, parents are so exhausted or overwhelmed. They're like, here, just please take the tablet. Just go, leave me alone for a little bit. So the people who should be role modeling for them are distant, and they're stuck on their phones. I mean, I'm sure we're all guilty at some point of I should probably put this down and read a book or talk to the person next to me.
Yeah.
But we're kind of all in that. I think it's the world we live in right now, where we forget that we can have face-to-face conversation with somebody, and the youth today are uncomfortable with that, because that's not how, we all grew up having to talk to folks, right? We didn't. Technology came later on in our lives after we'd already learned social skills and how to communicate. These kids are growing up with it from the time they're babies. They're placed in front of screens, or they have apps that target toddlers and little so this is all they know.
Right.
So as they get older, it's just a new app. It's just a new platform.
New camera, Instagram.
Exactly. A new filter. It's a new this or that or game or whatever. but then they don't know how to have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Right.
So they freak out when they get their first job. Like, I have to talk to people. Yeah, that's
Yep.
what you do.
Like that anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we have all these mental health issues that our generation didn't experience because of the lack of, social time, like actual in-person social time. So we've got kids who have severe anxiety or depression because they have nobody to talk to outside of their video games or computer games or, watching other people's lives on social media. Oh, I want that so bad. Or, I want to have friends, or, I don't have friends, or I'm too scared to talk to people to make friends because we don't know how anymore.
Right.
So I think that's a whole different epidemic in itself.
Right.
Is the fact that we have raised now a generation that doesn't know how to do these things.
Right.
And we're raising more generations that same way. And if we don't do something to interrupt that, this is just kind of where we're headed,
Right.
And
I think with today, we're also bombarded with a lot of information left and right, just
All the time.
all the time,
Right,
24/7. It never stops. So going back, actually, I was on YouTube. I was watching Michael Jackson halftime show '93. He was performing in the halftime show Super Bowl, and I pointed out to my wife, look at the crowd during that time in '93.
No phones.
No cell phones in the air.
Nothing.
People were just enjoying the music,
There.
watching Michael
in the
Jackson,
moment.
dancing.
Yeah.
And just like, look at the crowd. They're just enjoying the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look back, it's like,
But now we
everybody-
don't want to miss anything. So
Exactly.
I gotta record it. And I'm like,
And then you got to use the moment to then put online to
Yeah.
then have people comment, so like to bring the attention like back to yourself,
Right,
you
exactly.
know, to bring the likes and the
Oh,
comments
yeah.
back to you because you may be missing something.
right.
You know? So, man, that's a cycle right there.
Yeah. And this is why, like, going back to social media, this is why I don't use TikTok. I think TikTok, okay, so some businesses use it. There's nothing wrong with it if you want to promote your business, market your business and stuff like that. But I think 80% of TikTok is just toxic. There's just a lot of debauchery and a lot of, showing a lot of flaws, and it's the look at me generation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the endless scrolling, and I don't want to, like, you know what, I'm gonna get out of it because I already have Instagram, I already have Facebook. I'm happy, like,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
good, I'm
Yeah.
good to go.
We're also old. So
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like TikTok is a whole different generation, and,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get them, but that's exactly it. Like, it's the scroll,
Yeah.
right? And then you get so sucked into it, and you're like,
4 hours
oh
later.
my gosh,
Exactly.
I was supposed to do, or I need to go to sleep. I got to get up in 3.5
Right,
hours.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of consuming. Yeah, less consuming.
Exactly.
But it's also sad to me that sometimes adults like promote it too for their children. It's just like, yeah, why would you do that?
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Again, I'm busy. I need you to do something to keep yourself busy while I do what I need to do.
Right, yeah.
I feel like when we were kids, our parents would incorporate us in things.
Right.
We are going to the grocery store. You're going to sit in the basket or hold on to it. I mean, that was like mom's thing, was like, hold on to the basket. And we'd be, right
We're
there.
Right.
We're holding on, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we listened differently than kids listen now. We had a sense of like honor and respect for our parents in a different way. I think a lot of it is also because of what kids see on TV. Like, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and sometimes my husband and I will be like, where did she get this attitude from? She's been watching that show. Hey, I don't want you watching that anymore. Because I'm noticing that your attitude is changing toward us, and you're being a little more disrespectful, like you're not listening. And within, a couple of days, she's back to herself. And I'm like, it's because of what you were watching.
Yeah.
And we've been parenting long enough now where we know that with her. Like, you're easily influenced, or, oh, you've been hanging out with cousin so-and-so too much. Okay, we need to not spend so much time with that individual. Or, I don't want you playing outside with that friend right now because I'm noticing you're starting to sound like them. And that's not how we talk in this family,
Right.
And so if I want you to carry on the values outside of this house, I got to teach you the values of our family within the house.
Yep.
So when you go out, like, okay, if mommy and daddy were there, what would we say to you right now? Oh, Exactly.
Yeah.
We've taught you hear our voice in your head and you can
Right.
do those things, right? But that's, again, going back to the parents, it's our job to teach you these things and prepare you for the outside world, because it's ugly out there.
It is, yeah.
It's so ugly, and people don't have your best interest at heart. We tell you no
Seldom.
today, but it's because we love
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
and we need you to know these things. But they want what they can get out of you.
Right.
And then they're going to use that up until it's gone, and then we don't need you anymore. On to the next
On to the
sucker.
next one. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have that lizard brain of, we want to feel a sense of community, right? We have that tribalism.
Right.
And with the youth especially, they want to be part of like a group, and that's why that's why they join gangs, or they get into substances, because they want to feel part of something big, right? Something that's bigger than themselves, but sometimes they take it in a negative sense, right? So that's why I think entrepreneurship and individuality, getting to know your own voice, getting to know yourself. I think that's a perfect way to have youth to go to this is what I want to pursue in life. Something that's great, something that's good, something that will add value to people, help other people.
Exactly.
And I think when you do that, it puts you around the people that you need to be around.
Yeah.
When you're, instead of substance abuse or alcohol, which I can attest for because I went down that road. You know what I mean? And if I were to hop into entrepreneurship or more positive things in the beginning, it would have led me to the people who I need to be around just sooner. And I have more of a positive kind of system take place there. So
I was talking with a young man just the other day who has been involved in, juvenile justice system and things like that, and just came home from probation camp, and he's trying to get himself together. And I was like, so what kinds of things are you interested in? What are you into? What do you like to do? And he's like, oh, I really like making beats. And I was like, that's awesome. He's like, yeah, I figure make beats, and sometimes my friends like them, they'll rap to them. I'm like, there's actually a lot of like money in that too.
Yeah.
And I was like sharing with him from my own knowledge of music, like, hey, these are some things that you can do, or if you're getting more interested in that, we can look into those things and like help you learn more about that side of the industry, where it's not so much the people that are in the limelight that are making all the money and the business moves. It's the people behind the scenes. If you can just get your name on the record,
right, exactly.
but you wrote the song or you wrote the beat, that's where the the money is. And he was like, I didn't know that. And I was sharing with him some big name people that he knows that make their money actually from writing. And he was like, I didn't know that. I'm like, dude, like, that's where it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Create something. You don't need to be the face, but create something. Build something, because that's where you're really going to have a foundation that you can build on even further from that,
Right. And there's, sadly though, as parents, right, sometimes we just want the best for our kids. But, from a traditional family, Filipino family, they always say, pursue this career so you can make money and be happy. But that's just a traditional sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they say, it's always like, oh, how are you going to make money from that, right? Or how are you going to, how are you going to live from that? Like, are you going to be, an actor or actress? How are you going to make money from that? Like, are you going to become successful? And I think that's an insecurity that sometimes parents put out, because I think parents didn't really live the life or live the dream that they wanted to live, so they went to the traditional route, and they didn't reinforce that to their children. And I think that's kind of like a mentality that's kind of like that needs a pause or a stop, or be better at, or improve on it.
Because I think then the child will start second guessing themselves.
Exactly.
Like he loves to make beats so much, but then his parents like, and hypothetically, his parents like, well, how are you going to make money from that? And he's like, oh wait, and then he stops. And then when in reality, if he would have kept going on with his dream, he could have been the next, academics or DJ Mustard or whoever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a good point.
I think we also are talking about something that's even deeper. So if you're thinking about, like you just shared, your family's Filipino, which means, at some point they immigrated here, right?
Right.
So whether that was grandparents or whatever, there's also this mentality, especially with immigrant families or families who have experienced, immigrating to this country, where, okay, this is the land flowing with milk and honey. We've got to work really hard. We've got to, build something. We didn't have anything back home in our country, or we're fleeing danger or something. Yeah. So we've got to build, build, build. So everybody put your hands to work. And the moment that you have this idea that doesn't look like putting your hands to work in the sense that everybody's used to, it's like, oh, that's dangerous. Like, no, that's not going to make us anything. That's not going to make you successful. So like, I have a lot of friends who are Filipino, and several of my friends are like, yeah, nursing was in my future. Like that, that was it. Like that was it. That was it. I didn't have a choice. And here I am, like going to school for nursing, or, something like that. And their parents have talked about, but that's what we had to do. Like, we took whatever jobs we could because that's all that was afforded to us. Right. Or we didn't know the language, so we just took the cleaning jobs because we didn't have to talk to anybody. And we just did the hard work. But now we've done it for 3 generations, and it's like, Mom, I don't want to do that. Right. I don't want to scrub toilets. Right. I can do this. I have an education now. And so I'm going to do something different. And for a lot of generations, especially like our grandparents' generation, it's like, that's not gonna make you money. How are you, exactly. You're getting married. Yeah. How are you gonna like bring home the bacon and and you're talking about doing all these business ventures. Right. Where now in our generation, we're like, actually, that was also a poverty mentality, right? So we're talking about stuff even deeper. Like, we don't have to live in the poverty mentality anymore. Especially if we're trying to build legacy, or we're trying to do something different or better or whatever, like fill in the blank, right? So that means I have to shift my entire mindset. I don't live back home in our old country. Right. So my experiences are going to be a little bit different, and the opportunities to me that I have now are going to be different because I have more education, or I'm learning about investing. I'm learning about how to build a business, all these things. I'm getting connected with the right people that are helping me learn these things, so that, it might look hard at first, because anything you're building at the beginning is ugly, right?
Yeah, it's gotta
be. But you got to get through that. Even, our family who immigrated here, they had to push through, and it looked ugly at first, but once they got rolling, it was like, oh, everybody just hop on the train. Okay, we know what to do now, right? And so that's why we had so many generations of cobblers or jewelers or whatever, because great-grandparents built it, and we just kept it moving. Right? So if we're building something now, the generations after us can keep it moving and add on to it. We don't want them to just take what we do and just run with that. Add on to it. Make it better. Make it bigger. Make it different. Make it fit the generation that you're in. Right. So that you're relatable. Because at some point, like we don't really have cobblers anymore. Right? Like, when's the last time you drove down the street and like, oh, there's a cobbler? Like, I don't need that. It would be hard. You got to stay up to date. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, audience, there's nothing wrong with having a career. If you want to pursue your career, do Absolutely. It.
Do it.
Do what you love to do. But we encourage it. We very encourage it in this show. Pursue your dreams.
But if Definitely. You're miserable, it's okay to make a change.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And
it's okay to use that 9 to 5 in order to fuel your dreams.
Because
that's what we're doing right now.
Exactly. Building it from the ground up.
Exactly.
All right. So moving on, how to heal from mental health challenges. For example, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, bipolar, and multiple personalities. Like, do you get all these clients, all these people that come to you with all these different types of like problems?
Yeah, I mean, so the youth and the families that I work with, so the age range that I work with right now is like 4 to 20. That's like the age of our clientele. And most of the youth who are experiencing these things, a lot of times it's generational. They saw mom be depressed because she saw her mom be depressed. Yeah. And it's just like, that's all we've ever known. For some, it's because of something traumatic that happened. Sometimes it's traumatic illness. I mean, there's so many different things. Like we were talking about divorce. I've been working with one youth who witnessed his best friend get gunned down. So, you've got that kind of trauma, or youth who saw their parents involved in domestic violence all the time. Like, there's so many different things. Or maybe they just lived in a really horrible neighborhood, and all they saw was like gang violence all the time. And like, that's what they were used to, right? So there's so many different things. Like, the simple stuff is anxiety, depression, even PTSD. Like, those things, I feel like I get to witness on a daily basis. Deeper things like bipolar and multiple personalities, and another one we call borderline, those come from those really deep traumatic experiences where we were talking about more like DV, or they've been physically abused or sexually abused or something like that, where those things take place because their brain is trying to protect them from something. So a lot of times when, we have like a kid who's experienced like, bipolar depression, or a kid who would like dissociate, we're like, you are here, but you are not here.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? Well, at one point they had to do that because every day at 6 p.m. Dad would come home after work, and maybe he'd had a few drinks before he got home, or we knew, okay, now we gotta like get ourselves ready because he's gonna have 3 beers and then he's gonna come and hit us. Or, like, mom is on drugs again and we've gotta like protect ourselves, or I'm the big sister, so I'm gonna take the brunt of it so I can protect my younger siblings from whatever danger's about to happen, right? So maybe the younger ones maybe have some anxiety or depression, but that older sibling is really struggling because they took on more to protect the younger ones or what have you, right? So even within a single family, you can have kids experiencing different levels of things. Like, one sibling might be able to just function totally fine, straight A student, like everything's cool, have friends, they're student body president, whatever, right? Like thriving. And this other sibling can't get out of bed. They're like, are you not seeing what I'm seeing? Like, we're in the same house. How are you doing that? I can't even like brush my teeth in the morning. I haven't showered in a week and a half. Like, so a lot of what I tend to see is like families who have experienced, there's always some kind of trauma. Every family has their trauma. I don't care what family you come from. It can be something tiny. It can be something big. We all have some kind of trauma. So the first step is just kind of identifying. Like, what got you here? Because it's not just, you're just depressed. Like, okay, you're having a hard time at school. Okay, but why? Like, what started that hard thing? So a lot of what we do is we go all the way back in our assessments to when you were conceived. Like, what was going on with your parents at that time? Because that's where the trauma starts, is from birth, from conception, really. Like, was your mother on substances while she was pregnant with you? I've worked with a lot of kids who were born on substances and see how that affects their personality. So we start all the way back. Like, Mom, what was going on for you when you were pregnant? Oh, you almost died when you had them. Okay, well, what happened? Like, what was that experience like? Oh my gosh, she was, in the NICU for like 3 months. So you started off with a rocky life, and then all these other things happen, right? So it's not just like one event that causes these kids to experience these things most times, for any of us, right? It starts way back, sometimes even before we were even born. I was working with a grandmother one time who had her 5-year-old grandson in her custody. And we're just talking, and I'm trying to get like a family history on them and, get to know what's going on and why his behaviors are like this. And okay, how is he in your home? How is he with Mom? And Grandma starts talking about, I just don't know why my daughter's like this. Like, she's always doing this and disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. And somehow she got on her mom and her relationship with her mom. I said, that's why you do that with her. And I just said it just simply like that. Like, oh, that makes sense. Your mom did it to you, do it to her. And she had never seen it like that. And she started bawling. I mean, this lady just started crying. She was like, oh my God, I never put those two things together. That was my experience with my mom, and I did the same thing to my daughter, and now I have her kid. Like, oh my God, what did I do? And I'm like, okay, whoo, we see it, we acknowledge it, but we're not gonna go down like, oh, what if I die? What are we gonna do to fix it now?
Right.
How are we gonna start to heal from this so that he doesn't have to experience the same thing all over again? So that he can have a different experience in life, and one day when he grows up and has a family, they'll have a different experience. Like, how do we change the trajectory of your family now that we know that this is where it started from? Because for most people, they don't even realize. They think it's just, oh, my kid is a troublemaker, they this or that. But they don't realize, like, but you did the same thing, or you experienced this, and because of your trauma, you reacted this way. So now your kid's reacting this way because of their trauma. And it's just a pattern that keeps going until somebody breaks it. So same with mental health. Like, it will keep going until somebody does something different. So a lot of times when I'm working with like a kid who's depressed, right? One of the best medicines for that is movement. I don't like to call it exercise because they're like, I'm not doing that. I can't even like get up to go to the bathroom and come back. I'm not exercising. I'm like, no, we're just going to go sit outside on the front porch in the sun. Mm-hmm. And maybe we just walk down the sidewalk and walk back. We just need to move your body.
Right.
Because once we start moving your body, it's like, oh, this is what it feels like again. Oxygen, sunlight, a little vitamin D, right? A little fresh air. Exactly. So once we start to just interrupt their cycle, then we can start adding little things on here and there that begin to make those tiny changes. And the other part of it is we celebrate those tiny changes. Oh my gosh, you walked outside today. Like, woo!
Right. And they're like, celebrate the small wins. Yeah.
Celebrate. But you celebrate those tiny wins, and they're like, okay, cool. I'm gonna try it again. Yeah, let's do it again tomorrow. I'll be back same time.
I'll be here. Right.
Yeah. But that's how you start making those building blocks. And once we've walked outside 5 days in a row, cool. Can we like walk across the street to the park and like sit in a different spot? Cool, we can do that. Okay, awesome. Can we like go further? Hey, like, then they start getting creative. Like, oh, can we play basketball? Yeah, bring your ball. Like, let's go do it. And then you begin to see them wanting to make the change. It's not somebody telling me. And this is what I tell all my clients is, all of this is great. We're here for you. We're here to help you. But if you're not bought in, none of this matters. Mm-hmm. Right. If you don't want this change for yourself, if you don't want to get better for you, and you're just doing it because your PO told you, or your social worker said it, or your parents said you have to, or you're getting kicked out, that's not going to be lasting change at all. Yeah. If you want it bad enough for you, you're going to do it in spite of what anybody else says, right? Like, yeah, it's an added bonus that you're also fulfilling your terms of probation so you can get off and be free. But also, now you see, like, you've got some goals. There's some things you want to do. Okay, you want to get away from your family? Awesome. But how can we do that in a healthy way that's not just you running away? Yeah, right. How can you, like, build a life for yourself, get an education, create a business, or, how can you even take that back and help kids that were like you one day? Yeah. So you got to start really tiny with a lot. I mean, even as adults, when we're like, I'm not feeling it today. Yeah. But if I can just make my bed, like, that'll be something for the day, Yeah. It's much the same.
So just basically just teaching them, taking back their responsibility. Because whatever happened to you in the past is not really your fault, but now it's your responsibility to heal, right?
Exactly. And especially for kids, because your life as a kid is dictated by adults. Yeah. You don't have a lot of opportunities to say, I'm going to do this or I want to do that. It's like, no, you're going to go to school and because that's your job. And it's like, okay, so you're telling me when I have to get up, when I have to go somewhere, when I got to do all these things, right? You're telling me I can't hang out with these people. You're telling me I have to, go to court today. I've got to talk to these people. You're telling me I have to go to therapy, right? And so in therapy, as a therapist, a lot of people think like you go to therapy and they're going to fix you. No, my job as a therapist is to help you realize what you need to do. And then I kind of like throw some suggestions out there, give you some tools. Maybe I help you kind of point other things at, like, oh, I'm noticing this, or I heard you say that 3 times. And they're like, oh yeah, all right, cool. So it's me helping you heal yourself.
Right.
But in order to do that, you have to be ready and willing to do that. So sometimes I'm in therapy with a kid who they're not ready for therapy. And sometimes I have to advocate, like, this is not where it's at. We got to work on these other things before they're ready to do this. Or we're in therapy and we're just talking about things that make them feel better, you know? I'm not talking to them about their trauma and what mom said to them or why they're not with their parents or whatever, because that sometimes is more traumatizing. It's like, yeah, that happened. What are we going to do now?
Right.
How are we going to heal from this now and move forward? Because you can't change what happened, but you can make a decision to either do the same thing or something different.
Right.
There's really only 2 choices. You either do the same thing that you saw or you do something different to make it better.
Yep.
But that's where we give them the choice and they're like, oh, yeah, I do get to choose. I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you absolutely get to choose.
It comes down with a choice, self-awareness, right? Getting to know the history. Because just saying, like, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right?
Exactly.
So going back to your family history, and there are times where I do feel, there's times where me and my wife had like a rough patch and stuff like that, and just like all right, I know I have those violent tendencies as a man because I could be aggressive, but then I have to step back and say, okay, take a deep breath. I'm grounded in faith, by the way, by God, and just choosing to go back to God with all my emotions and all my anger and frustrations is just, it really is like a enlightening moment for me, because I'll be like, yeah, and I know I am fallen in nature for sure. And if I could just work on my fallen nature and become better for my daughter and for my wife, as a man of the house, that's where I stop the history of what my parents went through. So
right. Yeah. I think you touched on 2 things right there, though. So there's the, if I'm in this argument with my spouse, the best way for me to change the trajectory of that argument or to avoid argument altogether is for me to pause and remember it's not all about me, first of all.
Right.
There's this other person that's involved who has feelings and emotions and thoughts and ideas.
Exactly.
And if I can create space for them and try to understand their point of view in things, like, oh, I can see why you could feel like that, because the way I said that the other day, I might not have meant it that way, but the way it came out was a little snippy.
Yeah.
And I could see how you could take it that way and get upset. And you got to be humble enough to be able to apologize and be like, I'm sorry for that. Like, that was
for
me.
Sure. Yeah.
But also, being able to stand up for yourself enough to also be like, this is a boundary for me. Okay, this is something I'm noticing is rubbing me the wrong way. And this is just the people in general. Like, this is my boundary. So what is this telling me about myself right now? Like, is this something I need to go work on, And the other thing that, you had mentioned was having faith. Like, I think that changes everything.
Yep.
I even work with some youth who, have faith in God or what have you. And we tap into that. I'm like, okay, so how are you going to use that to help you? Because you can totally use your faith in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I have kiddos. I have one in particular who was so anxious about everything. And she's like, I've been reading my Bible every day. I'm like, okay, so what we're going to do every time is you're going to tell me what verse stood out to you this past week. And so we brought that into her therapy, and she's doing amazing now because she was able to tap into faith. I feel like sometimes it's so hard, seeing people who don't have faith in God or don't have any hope at all. And I'm just like, can we find a spark somewhere? Because if we can just find that spark, we can, illuminate that and use that to help you heal. But sometimes you see people that life has been so dark and so terrible that they're completely hopeless. And that brings up other issues of, I don't want to live anymore and things like that. So now I'm doing a whole different kind of work, trying to keep you alive because you have no spark of hope, period. And again, all of that comes from each person's resilience level. Like, how I've seen some kids who have had the absolute worst. I mean, lives that you would see in like movies. Like, it's that bad to the point where some of these are even like in the news. Like, that's how bad they are. And they're like the happiest kid. I'm like, how are you so happy? Like, what is driving you, kid? And can I get some of that energy? And then I see others who just, barely had anything that we would consider like traumatizing or bad, and they just can't move on. And they're ready to go kill themselves. And I'm just how did you get here? So I think a lot of it is also your own determination and like, do I have some goals? Yeah, I have some goals. So I'm going to go run after those and just put everything behind me because I can't do anything about that. But I got some things I want to do with my life. I want to build this. I want to be that. I want to, do this. Or I want to go back and help those people that were just like me. Like, I know what that feels like, and I don't want anybody else to feel like that. So I'm going to go back and like create a business to help, kids like me. Or, there's some that like, I love boxing, so I'm going to create a boxing thing for kids. Or I love sports, I'm going to create this. Or I love art and dance. And people go back and they use that energy that got them through, and they bring it back to these other kids. Like, dude, I know that's like, but I survived, and you can too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I think my marriage 2 years ago, it was not, I want to say bad, but it was just like, okay, this is the type of person I am, right? Because when me and my wife have a disagreement, it was just like, oh man, here we go, here goes Barry again. I'm seeing red. I'm furious, and it was bad. And then I got into, I went back to spirituality and faith, and started reading books like self-help books and stoicism, and how to be a man of God, how to be a man of the household, and what does it mean to be masculine. Masculine doesn't really mean to be aggressive, right? It means to be assertive but not aggressive. Right. And how to hold back my emotions, right? Mm-hmm. I started reading stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and all those philosophies, and I was just like, oh wow, that is really eye-opening and enlightening in a way, and spirituality. And now I could say that, today I was just like, when me and my wife and I have a disagreement, I'm just like, all right, just gonna cool it off, right? I want to hear your side, hear my side, okay? And if I'm wrong, I'm humble enough to say I'm wrong, I'm sorry. So
I think that's...
And she calls me out on it too, so she calls out my BS too, so...
Right.
Yeah.
I think that can be the hard part sometimes, admitting like, even for children, it's like apologize, and it's like, no, I don't want to, so I think for adults even sometimes it's like, if apologizing isn't always like the easiest thing to do, but the sooner you can be like, you know what, that was on me, that's my bad, I apologize, and it just seems like things get a lot better a lot faster that way, instead of one or both people being hard-headed and then just sitting there in silence in the same room and going to bed with their backs turned to each other, and it's just like, because that'll just keep going on, and then who knows, that might create another problem later, but the sooner you can be like, if you did make a mistake, you can be like, what, I made a mistake, I messed up, or that, like you were saying, that now that I'm thinking about that again, that might not have come out the wrong way at the time.
Right.
So I apologize for that. I can see how that would make you feel
XYZ.
this way. I think that's...
Well, and the best way to do that, if we're
you gotta
talking about
practice
families,
that though.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the best way to do that is, you're talking about being a parent. As a parent, apologize to your kids. Yeah. I mean, we grew up in a generation where it was like, do as I say, like, that's that, right? But also, there was some toxic things in us that were like, wait a minute, that don't work so well. So now as an adult, I'm expected to do this, but I was told as a child to do that. So, like, in our household, we started, like, if we were out of line or, something like that with our kids, we apologize. You know what? I did yell at you, and I'm really sorry. I was in a bad mood, or something happened that, had me upset, and I took that out on you. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. What I meant to say was, please clean your room, so we don't get ants or whatever, right?
Right.
Instead of me coming, oh my, you left the trash again. And they're like, oh,
Yeah,
and then they're
absolutely.
scared of you. But then they also don't know how to
Fix the same problem that you were just talking about.
or express themselves in what we in therapy like to call a pro-social way. Like, oh, this is an issue. Like, okay, I come in my daughter's room and just, like, she'll hoard her dirty plates like on her desk. And we did get ants, and I was like, girl, like, please, when you're done, bring this downstairs and at least put it in the sink. Like, let's just start with that, right? And so one day I had a rough day at work, and just everything just seemed to be going, wrong. And I snapped, and I was like, I walked out the room, and she's crying, and I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? do you hear that? And so I calmed myself down. And I walked back in there and I was like, sweetie, I'm really sorry that I snapped at you like that. I just, have been asking you to take your plates down. Can you please do that? And she's like, Mommy, I was so scared. I'm like, girl, I was scared too for a second. I know. But I'm sorry that I said it that way. Can we do a do-over and we give each other a hug? And then that is also teaching her that Mommy and Daddy aren't perfect.
Right.
Like, we make mistakes, but we're not too adult to come to her, too proud, right? To say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. So that's going to teach her to be able to stand up to someone when she's made a mistake and be like, you know what, I messed up, I'm sorry. And that's how you begin to model that. So then you become that adult who knows how to do that because that was modeled for you.
Right.
And you practiced that. And you're not trying to read the books and like make it up yourself, right? Which is great that we have those tools so that when you're aware of it, you can work on it and change it and make it better. Yeah. But how do we make that even better for the next generation, right? We model what we learned and help them practice those things. And we hope that they would do the same and keep it going. That's how we end those generational things.
Yeah, it really takes a lot of leadership. It takes a lot of leadership from within. Because, there's a saying like, you can't lead others unless you can lead yourself first. So you got to lead yourself first, absolutely. And I like how you mentioned earlier about having your kids doing the familial activities. So instead of like, hey, I'm gonna type this document right now, I need you to go on your iPad. No, why don't you come type with me, or have a book and start writing or something. Like, do things together. And so like my wife does, she likes to garden a lot. And she would bring my daughter outside, to do some gardening, to be outside, have, vitamin D, having fun and stuff like that. My daughter just, even though she's not doing the gardening, at least she's still outside, like playing, on the grass, getting dirty and stuff like that. So I think that's that's really is like modeling the way for children. I think that's a.
And on top of that too, on the other side of that, maybe I do need to take this phone call and I can't have you in the room with me right now because it's too loud. But saying, hey, in 15 minutes, I'm going to come back over and we'll color together. Okay. And maybe I'm setting a timer like, hey, let's set an alarm. So in 15 minutes, I'll be there. And then showing up in 15 minutes. Like, hey, thank you so much for giving Mommy that time. Like, now we can do our thing together. Because I think we're so used to, hold on, I'll be there in a minute. And then they never come and you're like, okay, well, they're unreliable. Like, and then you start to build up these other walls of like, I got to take care of myself because you're not reliable to your word. So my daughter is very much like that kid who's like, but I need you right now. And I'm like, let's build some tolerance for 10 minutes. Yeah. Or like you said, hey, I have to finish typing this email, but why don't you sit next to me and color and then we'll color together. Yeah. And so she'll sit, right on my hip, but I'm like, hey, we're together. Yeah. She's getting some much needed connection time because that's one of her love languages is like quality time together. And I know that, so I'm also going to create that space for her. Like, she's telling me she needs me right now. How can I show up for her and show her healthy boundaries of like, I have to finish this thing, but as soon as I'm done, then we'll have our time together. Yeah. And also, she's got siblings now too. So how do we share time together? In families where there's more than one kid, every kid wants their own attention, but sometimes it's like, okay, I'll go play with them. But now I just want you to myself. So then it's also setting those healthy boundaries of you can have your time, but this person can have their time too. So that, when we get into the workplace or things like that, if Johnny's getting a raise, we're not like, well, where's my raise? It's like, good for you, dude. All right, cool. Now, what do I need to do so that I can get that? Like, let me evaluate myself to be like, okay, what are the things I'm good at? Where are my growth edges so that I can get whatever promotion or raise or whatever. Let me not be envious of this person, because that's just going to make me bitter. Yeah. And then I'm never going to get it, because they're going to be like, well, there they go again. You know what I mean?
You got to clap for your brothers.
Yeah.
You got to clap for your brothers and your sisters. And, exactly. Then it's just like, that's not good for you inside, holding that, like you see somebody doing good and then you're like, envious,
right,
and
right.
that'll spread in your heart, and that
ruins all kinds of relationships and jobs, and then you just nobody wants to be around you.
You're just bitter,
right? Bitter and lonely.
Yep,
not a vibe.
Bitter and lonely.
Yeah, so I think communication is key. Really is key. Leadership and communication. If you don't have the open communication, say, I like that 15 minutes part. Hey, can you do this for 15 minutes? I'll get to take a phone call. That's actually really good. I actually wrote that down. I was just like, that's the thing I gotta practice. That's the thing I gotta do. So.
Sometimes now, even, I will look at a situation in our family, a parenting situation, and I will literally stop and say to myself, what would I tell my client's parent right now? Like, what would I say to someone that I work with right now? Because I'm struggling in this moment as a parent, as a wife, what would I say to that person to encourage them or help them get through it? And I'll really pause and think through that. Like, oh, I would tell him to do this, or I would tell him to do that. Okay, I should probably do that.
You gotta take your own advice.
You have to. Yeah. But I see how that has healed my family, and I get to see the worst of the worst all the time at work. So it makes me treasure my family time even more. Yeah. There are days that I cry because of some of the things I've seen and experienced at work, and I come home and my phone is on the charger and I'm just hugging my kids. Or my husband and I are just sitting and watching a movie together. I'm like, I just want to spend time with the people I love. Or I'm calling my mom like, hey, Mom, how are you today? I'm so sorry I did this as a kid. Or, or I understand why you made these decisions, Mom and Dad, or, things like that. And I just want to be around my loved ones more intentionally, because I hear these horrible stories and I'm there with them at the hospital, or I'm visiting them in juvie, or I just got off the phone making a CPS report, or I just sat in the car with you for an hour crying because you wanted to kill yourself. Wow. I see these horrible things, and so it makes me just thank God so much more for what I do have and how healthy it is. Right. Not perfect by any means, not perfect, but we're intentional about working on our family and, protecting our family and making sure that we cherish what we have while we have it, because it's not always going to be here either.
Gratitude, gratitude.
Yeah.
No. Oh, by the way, we have a special audience today. We have Mom and
we have Celeste.
Celeste,
Jules, her sister.
Your soon-to-be sister-in-law.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Jay's.
That's right.
Jay's sister-in-law, future sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So. If you guys don't know, Elkie Freeman is also the older sister of Jay.
My older sister.
So, yes. The older, more beautiful one.
It's
We would either get, when we were in school, it's either are you guys twins? Or, Jay, are you older? And I'm like, nope. He's not. But thank you.
Did you guys go to the same school?
We did. We both went to Rancho. She was a senior and I was a freshman.
Oh, and then in college, we were at the JC at the same time, and I was in the dance department. I saw this guy with your face, and I'm like, yes, you did. That's my brother.
It was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
Fun times.
It's fun. All right. So entrepreneurship part. So this podcast is about entrepreneurship, leadership, and finance. So just touch up on those 3 points real quick. Mm-hmm. With entrepreneurship, what advice would you give, with your expertise, what advice would you give to a spouse who's non-supportive to another spouse's dreams or goals or ambitions? How would you?
That can be hard. Yeah. So I'll just give you the example of my own marriage. So, gosh, April will be 15 years my husband and I have been married. Like, I don't feel that old. We also started really early, but we've learned a lot in that time. And one of the things that we learned was how to create space for each other and the importance of creating space for your spouse. So when we first got married, we were both, working part-time, but I was also in school full-time. I was in college full-time. And so we came up with an agreement between ourselves. All right. He's like, I'll work full-time so that you can finish school. And, I'll make sure that everything is taken care of, whatever, so that you can finish school. And then when you start your career, and I was like, cool, then you can go back to school and like, we'll do that. Right. And so we've had like some children along the way, but we created space for each other to be able to do that. So doesn't mean it wasn't difficult, and there weren't times where we struggled, and because we did, and housing was crazy sometimes, but we had this end goal in mind of what we want our family legacy to be for our children. And we understood that there was going to be struggle. And of course, it's you never want to struggle. You don't want to go through those things, but we learned a lot from that season of struggle. And so, when you're building something, when you're creating something, sometimes you're like making stuff up on the fly.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, you've never experienced this before. I've never experienced this before. How do we balance this while we're creating something different? Because we have both grown up seeing our families struggle. And we're like, we don't want our kids to see us struggle and like to feel like they can't ask for something, or, and not to say that we were like, broke down, dirty, poor, but it was like, sometimes we knew we couldn't get that thing we really wanted because there were some other things that had to take place for the family, right? Or we had to make room to make sure the family was okay. And so we're like, how do we make sure our family is okay and create at the same time? And so we knew that we had to balance, right? But we also knew like, okay, yeah, we're struggling right now, but this is actually, we're setting some things up. And so when I graduated, I, had already had my job lined up, thank God, my career lined up full time. So when he was working, I stayed home to go to school, but I also was, home with our daughter full time, which I think was a total blessing in disguise because I got to have those mommy years with her and got to like teach her what it means to be a woman and like what that looks like, right? And now on the opposite side, I'm working full time. And thank God my husband is not, intimidated by me making more money than he's ever made. He's like, hey, baby, get it, right? But he now gets to be home with our two boys. And they get to see what it's like to be nurtured by their father and like what it means to be a man. And those are some things that I would never be able to teach them as a woman. But at the same time, they have their mom, so I get to be nurturing to them. Our daughter also has dad time as well, so she knows what the love of a man should be, and not, she's not seeing mommy getting beaten or things like that. But so we're creating our family legacy while we're also creating our business legacy. So my husband, during the pandemic of all times, created a record label and a production company. And anytime you're creating something, it's always a little hard. And so we're like, okay, let's just start networking. But we're beginning to see the fruits of those things now. And we're getting phone calls from people like, hey, I heard your stuff on TikTok. He just started this like TikTok series little thing where he takes like a very well-known song and then he flips it with like a different, his own vibe on it. But there's some very well-known people in the music industry like, dude, I heard your stuff. Can we do something together? And he's like, yeah, like, where'd you hear it? Oh, I heard it on TikTok. Okay. And then for me on the other side, I'm, a licensed therapist now, and I've been doing this work for a while, but being able to work in the system or alongside the system, I see some gaps and I'm like, how can I like fill these gaps in over here? So he's building his dream and I'm like, go for it. You love it. You're good at it. Let's like get you there. And on the other side, he's like, you're really good at therapy. Like you're seeing these things. Let's build that. So while he's creating his, I'm also creating a program to like help fill in these gaps because I'm like, maybe I can partner with my current job one day, right? So where they lack, they can send them to me, and then I'm supporting not only, you know, this company that I love, but I'm also helping them add on these extra things that they don't have the ability to do, right? So not only am I like helping people, which is my passion, but I'm also creating something that's not here, something that doesn't exist. So now I've just opened up a whole new avenue in terms of creating business. And if I'm the only thing here that looks like that, and I'm the only one that you can funnel through, I've just created all kinds of business for myself.
Yeah.
So maybe that clinic fills up and I got to open another one. All right, cool. Like, that's more business. How can we do that? Maybe another therapist is like, man, I really like what you do. How can I partner with you? Or I want to do something similar. Cool. So maybe we're like branching off and we're building this empire because of one gap that we saw.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when it comes to like entrepreneurship, people are like, I want to be in business and do that. Awesome. Find your gap. What is your gap? Where are you seeing a hole somewhere? Because 10 people can do the same thing. And it's like, all right, I got 10 places to choose from. But if you find the hole and you're the only one that does that, or one of two that does that, your funnel is tiny, right? And it's like, I got to go to you because you're the only one that provides this service.
Yeah.
Or you're so good at what you do that I'm going to come to you over this other producer who's like, we have a friend right now who decided, you know, I'm going to go to this well-known producer and da-da-da. And he's had him on hold for like 2 years.
Wow.
And he's like, I finally got the music back. It didn't sound good. And now I'm asking for my money back. Let me come back to my friend. Like, he's like, I told you.
Yeah.
And, you know, his stuff was being passed on to some, you know, bigger name artists. And they're like, oh, I like this other dude better. Like, we're like, we tried to tell you the whole time.
Yeah.
It's not always about the name. And you might not be well known to anybody. But let your product, let your business, let what you do speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just had a conversation with my supervisor the other day, and she's like, so our, like, regional directors have been talking about you? I'm like, they have? This is a good thing. And she's like, they're noticing these things and how you handle these situations. And I was like, well, thank you. Cool. But it wasn't like I was trying to put myself out there. I was just trying to do the best that I can do, right? And really provide the best service for these people that we serve who really need it. And without trying to like put myself out there, people are talking about me without me having to do anything extra or special or... Right, I've already done it. And it's consistent, and you're seeing the consistency of what I'm doing, so you know I'm legit, because it's not just like one time here, one time there. No, I'm working on this, and I see my growth edges. Okay, I need to work in this area a little more. All right. And then people are noticing that, like, you were struggling there, but you're actually doing really good now, and we're seeing you like stay consistent with that. That's what's going to set you apart from other people who might be in your industry or what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's not like you're talking about yourself. It's
Not at
other
all.
people talking about you to other people. It's not like you're tooting your own horn. You know, they're seeing, you know, the progress. They're seeing the product
Yes.
of the work, and then they're talking amongst themselves. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're just out there, you know, tooting your own horn. It's
Because that can get you in trouble, right? And then they're like, okay, this
Or if
is
it's
an
not
arrogant
true,
person,
and
right?
it's actually garbage. It's like, oh, they said they were this, that, and the third, but actually, you know. So
You're
when
not.
other people are talking about you and telling it, it's like, you know, they're
I'm gonna keep my head down and keep doing what I'm
Keep
doing.
Yeah,
If it's working, don't mess it up, right?
absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Point leadership. I think we touched on it earlier, but why do you think people project their own insecurities? Is it?
Oh my
so-
gosh,
can
it's
it
so
be some,
easy.
Can it be sometimes a place of love and caring, or envy or jealousy?
I think it can be both at the same time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of reason why people project their insecurity, especially onto others, it really a lot of times doesn't have to do with maybe even that individual. It goes, like we were talking about, it goes way back to the root. Maybe there was a parent or a caregiver or a teacher or a coach or somebody that made you feel less than. And so now your whole life you're trying to like catch up or make
Spotlight.
up. Right. Like, "Oh, I'm so good at this though. Like you should really look at me like I'm really good." You don't use them. I'm better. Like, because we think we have to make up for something that some idiot or, somebody that couldn't see our potential was trying to tell us we'd never amount to anything. So now we're like chasing after something, right? Always trying to make ourselves better. But are we doing it for the right reasons?
Right.
Like, that's the whole thing. And then there are times where we kind of use our insecurities as like a crutch, like, oh no, like, no, I'm not that, to either try to make people feel bad for you, or because you're intimidated by this other person. You're like, no, it's okay. They can do it. It's all right. Like, let Johnny do the job. Like, no, he's better than me. And then we are, losing out ourselves.
Right.
Like, that's not healthy either way.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always been told, like, I don't know, as a kid, especially, it was a rough patch, but it was, I didn't know how to be successful in my own way. And if I did, it was looked down upon. And
It's a tough spot to be in.
It was a really tough spot to be in, because I was just like, I have my own voice, I want to be creative, I want to do things in my own way. But it was always looked down upon. It was always frowned upon. Like, I'm Barry Almeria. This is the way I want to do it. Not just because, not the whole egotistic, because I want to be successful my own way. I don't want to be defined by anybody else. I just want to define the way that God intended me to be. So, but yeah, it was hard. That's how kind of like, lowered my self-esteem too. So,
and I think part of that too goes back to culture, right? And how some cultures are so about the collective, but American culture, we're still about the individual.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of folks, like we were talking about earlier, from immigrated families who struggle with that. Like the most recent generation of the family member tends to struggle because they're in a country that's so individuated, and it's like, be your own person, do your own thing. But they might come from a family whose culture
Where
is
teamwork
it's
makes the
about
dream work.
it's about the collective, thinking about everyone. And then how do you balance that and be who God intended you to be, while also like, okay, is God telling me I need to just like go and do my own thing and then maybe come back to family at one point? Or is it for me to think about them now and then do, like, how do I do that, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's path is going to look different.
it's going to look,
It's going to look
Absolutely.
totally different. For some people, yes, it has to be about the family. Maybe that's what's needed. For others, maybe that is too toxic and they're like, I got to work on me because I can't be in this toxicity anymore, especially if I'm trying to break this pattern, right? So that my legacy has something better, different, whatever.
Right.
So I think that's kind of like an individual thing, right? But it sounds like you kind of struggled with that too. Like, okay, they're telling me I need to be this and do this because that's what they've known. And that's comfortable and safe, right? And sometimes doing something different is scary. And they're like, we're telling you this out of love because we love you and we don't want to see you fail.
Right.
But sometimes as parents, our own fears can cripple our children.
Right.
To the point where they give up on their own dreams, or they don't become all that they could, be all you can be, right?
Yeah.
But if you're holding me back, then I'm too scared to do it for myself. Even if people are rooting me on, they're like, you got this, you can do this. I'm like, but I can't because they told me that I can't because it's scary out there.
Yeah.
And then we never try.
And then you might get like resentment from that, like,
Yes.
oh, well, this person that's close to me or who raised me told me not to do this and I didn't do it, and then you see somebody else less qualified went out and did it 10 times over, and so then you're like, man, I can't believe they told me to give up on my, you know what I mean? So,
but you listened, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes, that saying, like, you take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes you have to, like, and I think me as a therapist now, I'm like, oh, I hear that you really care about me. And you're scared for me to fail, like, and I appreciate that love. But also, sometimes the best things are on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
And if you would just take that leap,
Got to.
you know, like you don't know what could happen. And if I do fail, I know I have a loving family that you guys will be right there.
It was
Like
learning.
it might be, see, I told you so, but it also be like, but I know that I got folks that like have my back. But if I never do it, I might not be able to look you in the eye because I'll be so angry, like you said, the resentment.
Right.
And that's going to ruin our relationship, or that might ruin something else, you know? So I say better to
Take the
leap
leap.
and fail.
Take that leap.
Take that leap.
But at least you tried, and you know
Exactly.
what you can do, and you know what you can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes failure is just, another
Learning
it's
experience.
learning experience, and it's one step closer to success.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always say if you fail forward.
Fail forward, yeah.
Fail forward.
Yeah.
Like at least fall on your face so
If
you've
you
got
can look
inches.
up, if you can look up, you can get up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then keep going. Like keep moving forward.
forward.
Even if you're failing. Fail the 100 times. That 101st time though
Might be that
might
one.
be the time that you do it. I used to do gymnastics, and for most of it my mom was my coach, and she's like, okay, so you do it 1,000 times. But that 1,001st time, you might actually get that skill.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I did
I
it!
did
I want to do it again! I want to do it over and over! And you get the satisfaction because you worked for it. It wasn't just handed to you. You weren't just like the most amazingly talented out there. But you had to work for that.
Yeah.
And it feels better when you've put in the effort and you've put in the work. And I know how hard it was for me to get here, but it feels better now than if I would have just gotten it, or God would have just been like, hey, here you go. Right?
You
But then I
wouldn't
would
be
have taken it for
prepared.
granted.
You
Or I
might
would
not be
have,
prepared for what it was.
right, or I might have ruined it
Right.
because I didn't know what to do with it, you know?
Yeah. Wow, this is good stuff.
It's gross.
I'm definitely gonna be having fun editing this tonight. So I'm gonna be taking notes.
Absolutely.
Put it in.
Like
yeah.
part 2?
That's great. This is great
Eventually.
stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all right. So one last point is finance. I think we spoke about this, Jay, and I think I tagged you on one of the Instagram story. But money doesn't change people; it only amplifies them.
Absolutely.
What do you think, buddy?
100% agree.
Ooh, you
100%
have just
agree.
said something right there.
Because like I play around kind of in the stock market, right?
Yeah.
Like I've made some investments, and there's, I listen to a lot of people who are much more intelligent at the subject than I am, and a lot of one thing I always see come up is like, there's a lot of greedy people in the
Yeah.
stock market, and people that are
Absolutely.
doing things like trading how they're not supposed to, or like dark pool
yeah.
trading, or keeping a stock down permanently so that you can like scare away investors and stuff like that. And these people make, there's like hedge funds and things that make billions of dollars, and it's like they make millions of dollars, we'll just say per day, and that's probably even shortchanging.
Right.
Yeah. These people have so much money that they couldn't spend it in a lifetime.
Right.
Like just like numerically, like you could buy so many. You can only drive one Bentley at a time, and you can only buy so many. Through the course of, even if you bought one a day, like it would you could do that for a long time. But these people, they're still not happy.
Mm.
They have more money they could spend in their life, and they're still not happy. Like
Miserable.
there's still problems at home. They're still, stepping out on their husbands or wives or whatever it is. And then there's people with absolutely zero, that still show up with a smile on their face every day.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about is, if someone does come into a large sum of money through the stock market, or what's called a short squeeze or whatever, right? Who are you I was like, what are you gonna do if this happens? And it's like, well, it depends on the kind of person that you are before you have it, So if you're a super generous person before if you're giving somebody like the last dollar in your wallet or the shirt off your back, chances are when you have enough money to help the people who need it around you, you will without question,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're already a super greedy, territorial person, when you get money, it's going to amplify that.
Yeah.
Yep.
on the subject of money, because then you're just going to want more for yourself, and numbers don't end, you know what I mean? And that's just going to be an ongoing cycle that's going to perpetuate. And I remember in one of our podcasts, we were talking kind of like on the same subject, and it was like, that's a vicious cycle, because then you're going to get things that you don't necessarily want to impress people you don't like, and it's like, oh man. So yeah, when I saw that, that you had that question in there, I'm like, oh, this is a good one. Like this is important,
There's always cycles, right? Life is cycles. Yeah. We have a life cycle, right? But what you were just saying, what does your cycle look like?
Right.
Like my husband and I were just having this conversation yesterday about finances, and like I said earlier, wanting to do better than what our parents were able to do, or the knowledge that they had, and now we're trying to learn more so that our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren are set up, right? And so we've been having lots of these conversations about finance and where we want to start investing and putting money and all different kinds of stuff. And I was thinking about how people who win the lottery, and how within a year sometimes
zeroed out.
Gone.
7 years.
Because they don't know how to manage the money that they get.
They didn't get the education. They weren't trying to seek out how should I do, who do I need to talk to make sure I'm managing this well? Who do I need to talk to learn how to make my money work for me?
Make more money.
To increase what I have, right? To just live off the interest, to be able to put away so that my kids don't have to worry about anything, right?
Right.
And so in thinking about that, it's like, even now, what we're doing, what we're building, what we're creating now, we might not be making very much right now, but we have the long game in mind of yes, it's hard, but you got to start somewhere, right? Houses don't just show up. You got to mess with the earth first, right? It's dirty. Sometimes it's muddy. If it's raining, you're like, oh, okay, now we're delayed, but you don't stop the building process, right? Ground gets dry, you lay your foundation, then you start building your structure and everything. So it's the same thing. It starts out with just you learning. It starts out with okay, I've got $10. How do I make this $10 work for me? I was having this conversation with one of our sisters actually last night, and she was like, oh, when I get a job, I said, no, girl, you start right now. If you've got a little money from school or whatever, take $100, put it in this kind of account.
She was telling me about that.
Yeah, I'm like,
talk about that.
I'm like, we need to have more conversations. We need to. You can't build something if you don't have the knowledge base, right? Exactly. I'm not an architect. I'm not going to go build something because it's going to fall over. But I know an architect, so I can go talk to them and build. It's the same thing. I need to find the right money managers, people who aren't going to screw me over because they're greedy, right? But somebody who's also going to be like, I want to help you build something, because I get joy out of helping people do the things that they want to do, but also see people get out of poverty. Also not see people just be greedy with money. Yay, somebody else has money now. Right. It's not the same 1% or, whatever we talk about, but you got to start somewhere. And like what you were saying, I'm the kind of person that will give you the shirt off my back, or, I'll loop back around if I see you and be like, hey, I got an extra sandwich, right? So that's just going to be amplified. Like what you said. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, creating this business because I see a gap where I want to help people. So obviously I'm not in it to just make money off of you. Yes, I want to figure out how to be able to take care of my family in the long term while I'm doing this, but
legally.
Legally. And in a way that if I died tomorrow, somebody would be like, she was the nicest person. Yes, I had to pay her for her business, right? But that's not what they're going to be thinking about. They're going to be like, man, she helped me heal my relationship with my mom. Or she helped me get through da-da-da. Those are the kinds of things that we want to be remembered for, right? What we did. Because what's that quote? You might not remember what they did, but you'll remember how they made you feel.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I want to be remembered for, not somebody who was greedy. We see it all the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Everywhere we look in the media, politics, it's everywhere. Greed, this, that. That's why we go to war, because we want more land. We want more money. We want more resources, right?
Yeah.
It's all about greed.
Right.
But if you have more and you do something with it that's going to impact someone else in the future.
That's like the ripple effect, because then they'll be able to help someone. They'll be able to help somebody else.
That's the pay it
Help
forward,
somebody
right?
help someone else. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's Mike's philosophy, is building generational wealth.
Yeah.
Just for our kids to be, our grandkids to live off from, and
Yeah.
adding that value, and just making an impact. I think that's what
Your stamp on the universe. Right?
yeah, a step in the universe, dent in the universe. I think God put us here for a reason, and that reason is to help people.
Help somebody.
To help
It's
people
not
and
for
add value.
ourselves.
Yeah, it's not just that.
No,
Exactly.
I say this all the time. We don't live our life for ourselves alone.
Yeah.
We're living it for somebody we haven't met yet,
Right.
who's going to need some knowledge, some wisdom that we have from something we learned 10 years ago, or a struggle that we went through, that we can support them and be like, you can make it too. I did it. You can do it,
Right. Yeah, and like you said, I want to make, I do want to, support my family doing what I love to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No.
But money should be at least the last worry. It should be how can my podcast, my videography, my entrepreneurial endeavors help other people? Give other people voices and stuff like that. Because when you look back at legends, right, like Bruce Lee, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, we still remember their names to this very day because they're making such an impact to this very day.
Still.
Absolutely, man. And it was what they did. We remember not how much money they made.
Exactly.
But we remember the impact that they had, like Muhammad Ali, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we remember the impact that they had on other people, and the awesome acts of, whether it's a sport, politics that they did, not how much money they made.
Yeah.
And how they used their platforms.
Yeah.
Thinking of Muhammad Ali, he used his amazing talent, and that he used that platform to shock the world, but not just because he was so good at what he did, but he drew attention to his group of people, right, and what they were suffering, and drew attention to the change that needed to be made here and there, and all those folks that you were just listing, they didn't just use their platform for themselves. It was like, hey, I'm rich and I'm famous, but look at these people over here. They need your help. And I think that's the greatest thing you can do, is to take your platform and be like, yeah, this is me.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Look over here, right? Help these people. Let's do this.
And I just feel fulfilled, when people, when I make an impact through my message and through my art. And I bet you too, when you make an art,
Absolutely, man. I think the cool part is, when I was coming out with my first shirt and ideas and spreading ideas and stuff like that, I had people like, yo, don't ever stop this. Keep doing this, until keep doing the shirts, keep, working on Saturated Soul and the program, and, the self-seed box. And, that's when I was like, oh man, because we all see ourselves in a certain way, you know? But then when I'm hearing it from other people, I'm like, oh, really? Maybe I am doing something that will have an impact on someone else, using something that worked for me to try to make it work for somebody else. And then I have people telling me yo, Jay, nobody's doing this. I've never heard of this before. Do that. Or dude, I'm proud of you. Or, people I haven't talked to in a long time, or people being reading through the comments and yo, man, you deserve this. I'm like, whoa, this is this. Yeah. It makes you feel nothing else, nothing could buy that,
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you're doing it because it feels good for you, or you're like, yeah, I'm just doing my thing, until somebody highlights it and you're like, oh, I didn't think of it like that.
I guess I am doing something cool.
Doing something cool, yeah, exactly. I like Saturated. I like your philosophy with it, helping other people go through sobriety. And stuff. That's a really good thing.
We need more of it.
I like it. I'm full support for that. So
thank you.
All right, well, we are nearing the end of our show here, audience. Elkie, where can people find you as far as website, social media?
So
and
right
resources?
Now, I am on TikTok. I'm building that platform.
No problem.
But it's under Hey Young Lady is the handle at Hey Young Lady. And that it actually stems out of kind of what we were talking about earlier about young women who are really seeking out love. And all the things I wish I would have heard as a teenage girl growing up, that I've learned along the way, and things that I'm now able to help other young women through or with, or that self-esteem piece, especially like we were talking about now with like social media, and you've got your Instagram models, you've got all these like perfect people, perfect lives on social media, and you're feeling insecure and things like that. So that's kind of like my platform right now that I'm working on building more, because I'm really passionate about that. But you're gonna start seeing some more like tips and tricks on overcoming anxiety and depression and different mental health challenges as well. So I'm also like wanting to know what people want to know, like what are you interested in learning more about or overcoming, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Okay. And it's also the same name for Instagram, because I think it's Hey Young Lady.
Yes,
Okay.
I also on Instagram as well.
Instagram,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Is that using TikTok for a positive, positive platform? Yeah,
Exactly. I'm like, if we're gonna be on here, I'm gonna at least like try to do something healthy.
Yeah, do something healthy. Yeah.
In all this sea of
balance.
unhealthiness. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just say it's so cool to have my older sister on a podcast with somebody I now consider a brother.
That's
with my
awesome.
mother in the audience in the comfort of my own home.
Hey!
You know what I mean? So like it's
You were just winning all around today.
I never would have guessed.
We're making history, man.
We're making history.
Hey.
This is one of the episodes I kind of just like, let me just quiet down and let the grown folks talk. But yeah,
Hopefully learn a little something,
yeah,
right? Or like
it's so
get
cool
some
to
nuggets.
be able to like have started this podcast with Barry, and then like have one of my sisters on. I plan on having Zelly on later with her business and stuff, and then my mom in the audience, and it's cool. So it's cool for me to just soak this one up. So I'm blessed, and it was an honor to have you on here.
It was an honor to be asked. When you texted me, I was like, you want me on your show? I was like, he wants me on
I
his
knew you
show.
had a lot of good stuff to offer, and I know there's a lot of young women, young men out there that you would tell me some of the stuff that you would see at work, and I'm like, man, that would make for a good informational, informative podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we capitalize on here. So I was like, man, I might as well just bring my own flesh and blood on here. So.
I would say I think that one of the biggest takeaways I've ever had was from a friend of yours. I can't remember his name, but we were talking about his life in the system and things like that growing up as a kid, and he's like, I don't remember all the names of the people that I worked with, but I remember people like you who helped me and supported me. And I think honestly that's what keeps me in this work every single day.
Amen.
It is hard.
Amen.
Some days are so hard. And I've gotten pretty good about not taking work home with me, but there's just some that you're just like, oh, you're hitting my heartstrings in a different kind of way. And hearing him say that was like, that's exactly why I'm in it.
Yeah.
10 years down the road, you remembered how these people made you feel, or, you're a foster parent now or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, this is why I do what I do every day.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, Elkie, thank you for being part of the show. It truly is an honor. I had a blast. So.
Me too. This was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, episode 5, trauma and healing under wraps. We will see you all soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye.
Dream to a million, but we don't chase cream, so we feed it to the children. Paint new faces on the canvas as I write classic poems like Sanskrit. Epic, 3 letters, don't forget it. Pronounce soul, but I got soul in excess. The next best to the best, but the best ain't.
You just listened to the Table Podcast produced by One Crate Productions. This podcast is free to listen and brought to you by no advertisements. If you enjoyed this listening experience, all we ask is to share this podcast to your friends and loved ones. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.
G and some gold dookie ropes like Run DMC.